Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the moderated panel, Digitalization in Armed People. Are we entering a new era of talent? My name is Anna Berczyńska, and I will have the pleasure to introduce our esteemed panelist that has just joined us, and apologies for some technical distraction when changing the rooms for the discussion. So I will start with Sebastian Drzewiecki, Vice President of ABSL, VP, Managing Director of Global Development Center at Sabre. Ben Hartfield, Senior Director at the Hackett Institute. Barbara Kaśnikowska, General Manager at Wrocław Aircraft Maintenance Services, Ryanair Group. Richard Narin, Senior Vice President at Randstad Enterprise Group. Francine Nedelkops, Head of Human Resources and at BNP Paribas, CIB and Security Services Poland. Bogusława Skowroński, co-founder and board member, MIT Enterprise Forum CEE and partner at Founded Partners. All 6 panelists with the whole variety of experiences and multiple perspectives on leadership in the, let's say, post-COVID situation. Before I turn to the attention and the voice to our colleagues, I wanted to refer to yesterday's content of the forum. We presented the report with plenty of useful data, and this has brought a lot of attention and a lot of questions, and we could really see it through the chat boxes and conversations, and also through the social media. I will just mention a couple of points from the statistical side. So we all know that a sector shows a high level of adaptability and resilience to crisis. That was said many times. And compared to other economic divisions, positively 58% of organizations continue with their recruitment and hiring processes. However, based on, again, ABSL report, we know that 64% of responders are simply not able to assess the level of resistance to global shocks or estimate if these shocks have a neutral impact on Poland, on their organizations. 45% responders commit to the global economic slowdown will primarily affect the relocation of activities, which seems to be opportunities. But on the other hand, it may trigger new, more flexible operating models in purpose to respond to new adjusted targets at the headquarters level. So this being said, I'm very, very curious to hear your thoughts and whether the sector should anticipate an operating model shift due to the global economy slowdown, and in what way. And firstly, I would like to ask Richard Randstad to share his point of view.
Thanks, Anna, and welcome everyone. So we all know that the impact has been quite significant with COVID-19. I mean, it's been the biggest hit on the global GDPR since the Great Recession. And, you know, if we go back to 2008, we kind of labeled that was a financial crisis, still a little bit of mystery behind how that actually happened. But today, we can clearly label this COVID-19. In fact, if you ask any young adult, they can tell you this is caused by pretty much a healthcare problem right now, and it's got very big financial implications. So, you know, Anna, when we look at the global labor market in perspective from also a Randstad perspective, you can see that certain sectors have been hit with high unemployment right now. Just to call out a few examples, there are the youth unemployment, there is the graduate study, the interns, there's the low-skill sector as well. All of them have come into very hard times from a number of perspectives, the way of working, the process of how we work and how we organize work. And that's really started for large organizations and also small ones as well to start to rethink their supply chain models, their processes. And we always used to think of digital as being innovative. And quite literally today, I've been reading a lot of information that we've just shared as well. And you know, it's no longer about innovation. We speak about criticality in the global market and the way that global workforces are actually organized, to the extent that digitalization in in the service centers and the operations that we do are actually becoming much, much more critical from the remote way of working, not just from a process optimization point of view. Remote working combined with the well-being of the workforce that's going to be activating them as well. So that's kind of a bigger picture of how we start to see that moving forward, Anna.
Thank you, Richard. I guess you've touched the point of the working together and well-being of employees in army digitalization. And Ben, with that, what would you think about the how does it impact the operating model of organizations? What is your view?
Yeah, hi Anna, and welcome everybody. Just to really build on the comments that Richard made, I think there's a couple of really interesting points. We are beginning to see organisations shift work as they've seen different regions within the world respond better or not so well to the COVID situation. And I think we are beginning to see that certain regions, for example, the Central Eastern European market, has responded very positively and very well to the challenges that have been thrown at them. We're beginning to see a shift in work. What we are also expecting is a couple of things, which is that we are likely to see organisations being able to source talent from new and expanding talent pools. So maybe the days of having huge centres with thousands of people in them may be something that gets reviewed in the long term. I think we will see that people recognise that they can fish from pools that exist outside of their main city of location. Whether or not that's outside of country boundaries and more geographically, more globally, we shall see. There will be a number of factors that implement that or make decisions on that, primarily around whether or not legal allows that. But also, I think we're going to see a shift in how it's used. So I think there was a reference yesterday from EY that talked specifically about the likelihood is that offices are going to become more about collaboration and about innovation and about coming together, and yet the tasks are more likely to be done remotely. So I think there's a huge impact on the operating model potentially, but as we've all said, the only thing that is certain right now is that there's a lot of uncertainty. So very, very interesting times, and I think we are actually in a fantastic position for services to really influence and drive some of that change and some of those efficiencies that the headquarter organisations are always looking for. So hopefully that gives you some perspective on how we perceive and how we're seeing the operating model changing.
Thank you, Ben. It looks like quite interesting times in the, in front of us, and with quite interesting change of leadership and point of views how we perceive shared services sector. Bogi, I would be interested from your CEO role perspective. What is your perception of what's coming?
Thank you, Anna, and delighted to be here with all of you. Let me make a quote, and I was hesitating first to, in this company, share a quote of Lenin, but I still will because I think it's very much to the point. There are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. We may be in a less dramatic moment than October 1917 in Russia, but sure think we're in the middle of big changes. So before making some general comments on the impact on the BPO service sector, let me move just one layer higher and maybe remind all of us by the big waves we're being hit as we speak. So we're in the midst of a pandemic, and many think that it will end once the vaccine is available. However, many scientists tell us that the next, possibly even more deadly virus is around the corner. So it seems that we need a new system of operations, which will not lock us down so abruptly into epidemic again. US is in the middle of being disrupted by China. We have population shifts due to climate change and high unemployment and economic downturn in the US. So what does it imply? What does it imply on the sector? So I would venture to say that remote is a new normal, is a new default. It's not something that will end a year from now. Digital strategy adoption is the norm. Many companies have accelerated their plans. So 2 years have been completed within 2 months. Cloud and scalability is a new norm. I think supply chains reorganization will happen because many decisions are now driven by the politics of the hour. And I would venture to say that less travel may also mean less tolerance for different cultures. So such sectors are travel, commercial real estate, physical retail, restaurants, oil, cities and states, colleges. I mean, who is going to pay $100,000 a year for a Zoom webinar? It will for sure change. And all these changes will ripple through the whole economy, including the BPO, I would venture to say. The report made very interesting points, and I guess the impact so far has been minimal or not accessible. One thing we know that we expect decreased number of new entrants, and that the sector shows signs of maturity. As a spokeswoman for the innovation sector in Poland, being a co-founder of MIT Enterprise Forum ecosystem, I see that many corporates, including the ones in the audience today, are very interested in the technological solution, innovative solutions of startups. So I guess this implies interest in strategy diversification and introduction of new interest in new markets. So in conclusion, I would suggest that the source of growth in the BPO sector in the next 10 years will be very different from the sources we've experienced in the last 10 years. And I look forward to working with many of you on the profitable innovation with growth path of your companies.
Thank you, Bogi. Very, very inspiring, intriguing. And I guess this change, this shift or drivers of the shift in the sector also mean like an evolution of the way we operate, but it will also bring a huge impact on the way we hire, on our employees, on their expectations, and the whole ecosystem around the shared services and office spaces. And let me now refer again back to the report. So we know that when the pandemic was called out, 100% of our employees went simply on home office. And now we know after 3 months that, it is obvious that we will have a mixed model of working at home and working in the offices where we socialize and team up. And we know that 75% of companies confirmed that they will increase simply the feasibility of working from home up to 25%. And so far, it was like 2-3 days on average per month. So it is a huge change. And but on the other hand, we can also positively observe that the efficiency was not impacted. So this being said, through the lenses of employees, I think this opens doors to the new opportunities, both in terms of workplace models as well as the new talent pools from many countries, from many regions that were not reachable so far. So this all means a significant shift also of the expectations towards attractiveness of office locations or office design. So I guess all of viewers, as well as me, we are very eager to hear from you, being seasoned business people leaders, about your views, how the work model and culture will change our reality. So do you think companies are going to become location agnostic? What would it mean? Would it mean a borderless access to new talent pools? What is the drive of changes of employees' expectations? And I would like to start with Francine, please.
Yeah, thank you and welcome everybody. For sure. I mean, I think it's been said previously, but with the pandemic, we were suddenly thrust into a turmoil of change. We went from 4 days of home working in average to suddenly 100% of our staff working from home in a matter of weeks. Managers and employees had to suddenly learn how to adapt to that quick change and how to manage or be managed remotely from one day to the next. And we saw that it was possible. We saw that companies were able to absorb this incredible amount of change. Recruitment, as I think you mentioned previously, did not stop during these times. I mean, at least in our company, we continued to recruit. We found and we had to adapt to new recruitment and sourcing mechanisms, and digital tools obviously played a really big impact on that. And it is very evident that whilst we don't know when or how this crazy period is going to end, we do know that the change that we've experienced is going to sort of become the new normal in some capacity in the months and years to come. So for sure, when it comes to talent attraction, companies are going to have to think about how people adapted and reacted to these changes, what they liked, what they felt really very grateful about being able to work from home, having flexibility, having certain adaptations to traditional working mechanisms or working practices, and equally what will need to be adapted on a more permanent basis in the months to come. So for sure, digital solutions are going to play a key part. I think collaborative tools are going to be really very keen to attract talent and provide them with solutions that will allow them to incorporate this new normal into their daily workforce. I think also the talent pool will expand because geographically we'll be able to be more flexible in who we reach, where they are based, and how we support them remotely. I think certain skills are going to also play a big part in what our future talent will look for. We've always talked and it's always come up that we need people, we're always looking for people that are comfortable with change or that will be resilient. But I think the current environment has taught us that we really need people, and we will continue to need people in the coming years that will be able to quickly absorb and adapt to big shifts, to different curveballs that might be coming our way. Again, because we're in a period of uncertainty, we don't really know how this is going to fare out in the coming months. I think we're going to need people that are going to be able to have a better sense of working remotely, and as I said, be managed remotely, manage teams remotely. We touched upon well-being. I think companies are going to have to think about their well-being strategies to support staff that are going to be working remotely or that are going to be working in more isolated scenarios on a more semi-regular basis. And I think that's going to play a big factor in retention. I think the future candidates, we could see it already during the pandemic. Candidates were already interested in what's your policy going to be when the pandemic ends? Am I still going to be able to work from home? Am I still going to be able to, have this flexibility? And I think that is going to continue, and it's going to play a retention element. It's going to play an employee branding element in our strategy of attracting talent, and it's going to also reshape a little bit the culture of companies. I feel. I work for a very regulated industry, and for sure we know that there are certain restrictions that we now need to rethink. So it's also going to start to embed in our internal corporate culture in order to adapt to these changes and continue to support and provide the best environment for our future employees, for our current and future employees.
Thank you, Francine. Despite the uncertainty, I can feel like from your perspective, from HR experienced leader, that you will definitely ensure the comfortable shift of the organizations, along with all the HR departments in other sectors organization. And thank you for that positive insight. With that, I would like to turn to Sebastian. You represent IT world, and you have digitalization around you all the time, but also the background of your core business in the organizations has brought a lot of challenges. So could you please share them with us?
Yeah, so I think many thanks for the invitation. I'm glad to be here with you. So there's I think globally, I think maybe the first time in the history we go through the interesting experiment of suddenly changing the way how we operate to be more digitally oriented. And when I talk to my friends and colleagues about, okay, how the companies will be doing now in the future, we simply don't know what will be probably the best scenario. I would definitely echo Francine. There is a lot of expectation, demand for people to work remotely in the future, which I think also makes sense to some extent. But some people says, even people from technology background working in the tech industry, they are saying, I can go back to the office. I need to see people. I need to experience like the office type of work. I need it. So it also depends on the personality. So this experiment, we can put some thesis, how we will progress in the future, but definitely there's a huge change in the way how we operate. The change is coming from the perspective that some decision makers discovered finally or suddenly that you can run the multi-billion company from your kitchen, and you can present your company financial results to the street using your home laptop and home office, and nothing really happened. People received this information. All of us, we work the same way, which I think will drive a lot of changes in the future. There'll be more flexibility. The ideas like work from anywhere will be also possible and will definitely impact the whole world. We are operating the travel industry. So for us, technology powering the travel is a bit challenging at the moment from that perspective. But probably as any company, day one, I remember Friday, we finished work at the office. We sent information to people on Saturday. The office will be closed from Monday. And from Monday, and 10,000 people started working remotely from homes. So we will see how this experience evolves. I would expect there'll be a lot of flexibilities. I would also expect that what also Francine said, there'll be definitely challenge to keep the morale in the company, keeping people connected to the brand, keeping people connected to the strategies. I think communication for people will be extremely important to give them the context, to check where they are. I was also thinking that you have now invest some money, a lot of tools needed to be successful in the future. And we are using at the moment one of the solutions. You have Zoom, you have Microsoft Teams, but also if you can imagine people, architects working together remotely, they also need something to paint something on the wall, on the whiteboard, to collaborate, to brainstorm and so on and so forth. So also help definitely the digital industry to invest, to be more important to the success of the business in the future. We also change how we operate in the sense that at the moment, there is much more democratic system, because if you may remember some meetings when you had a call with colleagues from the US or Asia, they were in the room, you were in one room, you were in your home office. You will not always be visible to them. They not always use video cameras. And now everyone uses the technology the same way. So all people have equal voice in the meetings, which is definitely better from the diversity perspective and productivity perspective. So you see a lot of opportunities. Then the flexible model to source from everywhere, it is a fantastic idea to some extent, but also might bring some ringing bells to our colleagues and in the companies. Okay, if you can source from everywhere, can you move my job to everywhere? So it's like how we manage this ambiguity in the system, because you want to have the flexibility. At the same time, you want to make people feel secure.
Thank you, Sebastian. So many interesting insights about this democracy in the calls, during the calls and discussions, and this lack of, let's say, feeling of safety, right, due to the changes that are upcoming, and not really able to define what it means to me as an employee. So we could elaborate on that, I think, for hours, but I need to move now, and I would like to move to the person where the people leadership means really a lot, and has really evolved into a new term, a new definition when COVID was called out. And Barbara, you were working with people physically on the ground, on the airport ground, and you were challenged with so many aspects, especially with the security aspect of employees. So if you could share the insight, how you manage that.
Thank you, Anna, and welcome everybody. Yes, I'm coming from the sector where actually service cannot be delivered remotely. I guess not many of us would like to have a flight where the plane is when the crew is working from home office, right? So that will rather not happen. The same with the aircraft maintenance. Actually, our engineers, they have to be in the hangar. They have to do the work, the job physically with their hands. And COVID has not changed this. We were working during the pandemic without any break. And yes, it created a lot of challenges because we had to secure our people. We had to make them feeling comfortable and safe as much as it was possible at this situation, giving them PPE and the personal protection equipment, disinfectants, gloves, masks, etc. But as well reorganizing shifts in such a way that they were not meeting each other to avoid too many people in one room, etc. And that was a challenge, but it worked. And now we are still continuing like this. Of course, when it comes to the supporting staff like HR, IT, most of the tasks can be done from home, and they were for the last 2 months. But will we continue such? Maybe to some extent. Definitely not 100%. So it will be, as you, Anna, mentioned, this mix kind of model. In the aviation, the communication, the effective communication and teamwork are extremely important since they affect the safety of operations. Actually, lack of communication and lack of teamwork are identified as one of the most common precursors of the incidents. So, and of course, safety is a priority for every airline, right? So, and of course, the communication and teamwork can be organized, or they are possible as well over the internet, but they have to be organized differently. That's what Sebastian mentioned, that people, they would like to see each other. They prefer to meet personally, not just virtually, not just through the screen. And so, yes, that will be, that there will be some changes, I'm sure, in our model of work. Of course, only in some areas where it's possible, not for the crew or the mechanics, engineers. But that will create a lot of opportunities on one side, talking about talent acquisition, but as well challenges with managing and being managed, was what Francis mentioned. I think it applies to our sector as well.
Thank you, Basha. It becomes crystal clear that we need a new type of leadership acumen. But I will park that for a second because I would like to hear from the analytical point of view some words on this expectations shift from Ben and then Richard, just shortly, because it's interesting how you, from the, let's say, the analytical point of view, see what we are doing with our colleagues actually in practice.
Yeah,
So, Ben.
so thanks, Anna. Sorry. Yeah, so, and I think interestingly, how we're going to see the behaviours of people and how we're going to see the behaviours of employers is going to be absolutely essential. What we are anticipating, what we expect to see is, and I think Francine and Sebastian have already touched on this, but this sense around, actually productivity and engagement levels are very high right now. The question is, as we move to a more permanent deployment of some form of remote flexible working, how will organisations address keeping that level of motivation, that level of engagement high with their employers? How will they be able to absolutely focus on the new requirements around recruitment, around attraction, around onboarding, retention, building a culture within an organisation that's much more remote? So I think there's a huge number of factors, but I agree with everyone that says with these challenges becomes great opportunities. And I do think that we are, as I said earlier, we are at a really pivotal moment within our sector, in industry and business to embrace and deliver against some of these huge opportunities. But there are very, very interesting sort of section right now, and how we'll see organisations communicate better to their existing employees to continue that culture, to continue to drive engagement and retention, at the same time deliver a new message to their people and to their potential people, to try and ensure they're attracting the right people at the right time and building the right skills across the organisation to be able to really drive this transformational change. We've heard yesterday that absolutely people drive transformation. I think is essential that we don't lose sight of that. How do we embrace people and technology in the same time to drive the transformation that's required? It's a very, very interesting time for us.
Thanks, Ben. And Richard, what is the Randstad perspective from the analytical point of view?
Absolutely, and sort of building on what Ben has shared with all of us, there are a couple of points. First, let's just look a little bit at the macro level in a company these days, and it's happened. Francine mentioned it as well. Your employer brand is so important these days, but also measuring employee satisfaction and engagement, on a weekly basis. I mean, that's statistic number one: is measure your satisfaction with your current workforce on an employee level at a weekly basis, and take that, start to analyze it. Are you improving? But particularly asking around how's COVID-19 impacting you, your welfare, your productivity, and what can we do as companies to make that more smooth, more pleasant for you? And then if you start to go from from the micro to the macro level, you've got really how are organizations engaging with their own supply chains outside of their organization? How do you keep connected with your critical supply chain or your suppliers? And so as you would measure satisfaction internally, taking it externally to your suppliers as well and measuring your customer satisfaction, it's so vital to do that. We are still in, I think, an area where when we bring it back to digital, integration of platforms, Sebastian will relate to this a lot. We still don't have all of the transparency we need. We have a lot of data on top level metrics, but now what we really see is bringing data into driving decisions much more so than ever. And those data, it does lead to really strong insights from your hiring pipeline through to your internal mobility, and how are you really planning and upskilling the workforce that's very critical for your current, but also say, the next 3 months, but also 3 years as we still move into some uncertain times.
Thank you, Richard. I mean, we really count on some more informative data from both Hackett and Randstad, because you have proved both that we can really predict based on the information for the ABSL member companies, that we can really work with that and really challenge ourselves, challenge our views and experience against what you bring in the data for us. And I know we are quite close to the time, but we have a couple of minutes, and I would love to ask last question and ask you, each one of you, so the key message that we can share with our viewers on new leaders who definitely seem to become more suited for unpredictability and uncertainty. So maybe I will start with Bogi. What is the key message to share? What would you advise to our viewers?
Let's stay optimistic and let's innovate.
Bogi. Basha?
A very short message. Mine will be short as well. Just be flexible and open mind. Keep your mind open.
Thank you, Basha. Francine?
I would say stay close to your guys, stay close to your teams, check in with them regularly, touch base with them as much as possible right now, because that is absolutely crucial.
Thank you, Francine. Ben? Unfortunately, we cannot hear you. Maybe you can unmute yourself.
Sorry, Anna. Sorry. Yeah. So I would say, likewise, be innovative and inventive, be open-minded, be empowering, and most of all, be brave.
Thanks, Ben. Richard?
I think to summarize it, it would be take care of yourselves, take care of your well-being. We've been working at home a lot, and I know my fitness routine has drastically changed. If you're leading and you're leading teams, be strong for your teams, but also please be strong for yourselves and take care of yourself right now.
Thank you, Richard. And finally, Sebastian.
Again, yeah, I think for me is what is very important, what I'm really trying to do on the daily basis and also convince my colleagues to do is support each other. Regardless of the organization we are today, we are going through the massive experiment on the global scale. And ABSL or other associations are extremely helpful to share the experiences and knowledge. And be brave, be flexible, find the ways, and also potentially collaborate and influence the legislation decisions to make our companies' lives way easier. So I think I would say one word: collaborate together, regardless of the sectors, company, or work. I think it's important to be together today.
Dear colleagues, dear viewers, thank you so much. Thank you for joining the panelists. It was a pleasure, and I guess you have brought a lot of new questions, but also confirmed that we can do it together. And that concludes the panel, Digitalization Arm in Arm with People. Thank you so much for your attention, staying with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.